It's so fascinating that although martial arts have been around for so long, so many thousands of years, that we can really trace very recent spectacular progress. Like from 1993, from the original UFC to 2021, where we're at today, what a spectacular explosion of ability, of innovation, of just the level of technique is so much higher than it ever was before. I don't think there's another thing like it in terms of athletics. If you look at any other sport, there's incremental increases in the abilities of the athletes, but nothing comparable to martial arts.
I'm so glad you said this, because we're very privileged to live as martial artists in this age. This is, in my opinion, is the most exciting time for a martial artist to be alive that I'm aware of. Maybe in ancient Greece, maybe they had something with pancreation that was more exciting than this. You'd have to show me some pretty damn good evidence.
If you could take Gordon Ryan and bring him back to ancient Greece, he would fuck those dudes up. Do you know how easy it would be? You know how amazing it would be? All those guys would line up, bring their champions, and they'd be like, what is he doing?
In general, I would agree with you. As a general rule, I believe that later generations almost always beat earlier generations. Like Jesse Owens was a great sprinter, but Usain Bolt will destroy him in a foot race. There's just no getting around
The
that.
only place where I make exceptions is boxing, because I think there are boxers from the old era that just would be spectacular no matter what. I think Muhammad Ali would be, especially when he was Cassius Clay before he was stripped of his title. You take the guy who beat Cleveland Big Cat Williams, and I think he boxes with almost anybody of any era. I think he's just amazing. Marvin Hagler. I think you could take Marvin Hagler, stick him in with any middleweight champion of all time and any time in any era of boxing, and you're just dealing with a champion. I mean, it's just because there's not much difference in boxing. Like you see some unique approaches like Floyd Mayweather and his shoulder roll and his incredible defense, and you see it. We were talking before this podcast when we were talking about Canelo Alvarez, how he learned from the Floyd Mayweather fight.
Yes.
His head movement, and so you're seeing these steps where they're learning. But go back to Willie Pep. We'll go back to Pernell Whitaker. I mean, Pernell Whitaker, it's spectacular defense.
Agreed, yeah.
I mean,
I hear you, Joe, and I think there's some good arguments to suggest that you may be onto something here. Let's look, for example, at Sugar Ray Leonard versus Floyd Mayweather's father, which was a classic fight, by the way.
Yes,
wonderful,
amazing
match.
fight.
Now, you get to see just how good Sugar Ray Leonard was in the 1980s with that match. Now, you could make the argument, as Sugar Ray Leonard does to this day, that Floyd Mayweather isn't that much better than his father was, that they're of comparable skill level. And you could argue on that basis, exactly as you said, that maybe some of those guys from the 1980s would have gone against the best guys of this generation and done just fine. The difficulty, of course, that it's difficult to measure combat sports.
Yes.
In the case of Olympic sprinting, there's an obvious measurement here, time, and so you see the progress more clearly. Nonetheless, as a general rule, I do think even in combat sports, earlier generations tend to lose to later generations in most cases. There could be some exceptions, but I think, for example, if Kimura, who was the greatest judo player of his generation, went up against Yamashita, even if you took away the size difference, I just think Yamashita wins. He just knows more. He's just had the benefits of the insights of one generation pile upon the next and the next and the next. They create a compounding effect in learning where the athletes from a later generation start from a higher point than their predecessors did. And so as a general rule, I'll always favor the more recent generations over previous generations. But to your credit, I do think there are some exceptions in combat sports more than other sports.
I agree with you as a general rule. The exception I make is boxing. The reason why I make that exception in boxing is because I don't think the progress has been as spectacular as it's been in martial arts, and I don't think the approach is as comprehensive as it is in grappling or clearly in mixed martial arts.
Interesting.
In mixed martial arts, I don't think there's any argument whatsoever that 93 compared to, like, I was just watching one of the fights from the early UFCs, and it's almost comical, the difference in the level of skill today from just debut athletes that are just starting out. But boxing, if you take like the Roberto Duran, who beat Sugar Ray Leonard at 147 pounds, which wasn't even his best weight class. His best weight class when he beat Ken Buchanan at 135 pounds. I mean, that one, he was a savage. I mean, that lightweight Roberto Duran is one of the greatest boxers that ever lived. But boxing is two hands, a variety of techniques applied in a bunch of different ways, but it's just two hands. You have defense that's applied in a bunch of different ways. You have an understanding of distance and timing and how to feint and throw that timing off, and head movement and being able to anticipate which direction attacks are coming. All that stuff was already understood. It was already understood with Joe Louis. It was already understood with Sugar Ray Robinson. And it's just different approaches in terms of the ability to prepare an athlete. More scientific approach in terms of nutrition, rest, recovery, all those different things. But there's something to be said for hard-nosed, disciplined warrior training camps, like the kind that Rocky Marciano used to go through, like the kind that Sugar Ray Robinson used to go through. I mean, these guys they were young enough so that they probably didn't apply the same sort of rules that strength and conditioning coach would apply today, but you guys don't apply those rules. You guys train 7 days a week. So you guys fly in the face of that.
That's
right?
true.
It's true. There's something to be said for just hard work and discipline.